The Academy expelled Darian Vale in front of every noble student. His name was erased from the ranking board, his uniform was burned at the gate, and the girl he had protected for 3 years pointed at him and said he cheated. The courtyard of Aurelian Academy went silent. Then the laughter began. 1,000 young mages watched from white marble stairs as Darian stood beneath the execution bell, his hands bound with silver wire. Above him, the ranking board glowed with every student's name. First rank, Cassian Vare. Second rank, Illyra Morn. Third rank, Seraph Holt. At the very bottom, where Darian's name had always lived, the letters cracked apart and vanished. Failure. Expelled. Forbidden from all royal examinations. Dean Malrek lifted Darian's black academy coat with 2 fingers, as if even touching it offended him. "Darian Vale," the dean said, "you entered this academy by scholarship, wasted its resources, then used illegal spellwork to injure Lord Cassian during the final trial." Cassian stood beside the dean with one arm wrapped in bandages. He looked wounded. He looked noble. He looked like a liar. Darian raised his head. "I did not attack him." The dean looked bored. 3 witnesses disagree. Darian turned to Illyra. Her blue uniform was spotless. Her silver hair was tied with a ribbon. Darian had bought her after selling his winter boots. She would not meet his eyes. "Illyra," he said quietly, "tell them what happened." Her fingers trembled. Then she pointed at him. "He cheated," she whispered. "I saw the black spell circle under his hand." The words hit harder than the silver wire around his wrists. Darian had protected her in the trial maze. He had taken a beast strike meant for her. He had carried her out while Cassian hid behind a barrier, and now she was saving herself with his life. Cassian smiled. The dean dropped Darian's coat into an iron bowl. A red flame swallowed it. The students cheered. Darian watched the fabric burn and felt something colder than anger settle inside him. For 12 years, he had believed Aurelian Academy was the only door out of poverty. He had studied until his eyes bled, practiced until his fingers split, endured nobles calling him gutter-born, dead mana, charity rat, all because one day, if he graduated, his little sister Nera would never sleep hungry again. Then the dean snapped his fingers. The silver wire fell from Darian's wrists. "Leave before sunset," Malrek said. "If you return, the guards may cut out your spell core." Darian looked at the burned ashes of his uniform, then at Illyra, then at Cassian. He did not beg. That disappointed them most. Night came with rain. Darian left through the eastern gate carrying 1 torn bag, 1 cracked spellbook, and 16 copper coins behind him. The academy shone with golden windows and celebration music. The final trial feast had begun. Cassian would be honored. Illyra would be praised for her honesty. Dean Malrek would tell donors that corruption had been removed. Darian walked down the hill until the academy lights blurred behind rain. Then his legs gave out near the old training forest. For the first time that day, he laughed. Not because anything was funny, because if he stopped laughing, He might crawl back and beg them to admit he had existed. A voice spoke from the darkness. Finally, Darian froze. The trees ahead bent without wind. Beyond them stood a tower he had seen only in old drawings. Black stone, no windows, no door. Rising where no building had stood a moment before. The forbidden tower, Noctspire. Every Academy child knew the warning. If the Noctspire opens, do not enter. If it speaks, do not answer. If it knows your name, run before you remember why it was sealed. The tower should have been myth. It should have been buried under 300 years of royal law, but its black walls gleamed in the rain, and across the stone, pale runes opened like eyes. Darian stepped back. The tower whispered again. Darian Vale, expelled, erased, unclaimed. His cracked spellbook flew from his bag and opened in the mud. Every page turned black. Then white letters appeared. Failure accepted. Inheritance available. Enter and be rewritten. Darian looked back at the academy. No one was coming. No family name. No master. No future. Only a tower that wanted the thing everyone else had thrown away. He wiped rain from his face. "If this is a trap," he said, "you chose a man with nothing left to steal." A door appeared in the tower. Darian entered. Inside the Noctspire, gravity had opinions. The floor curved into walls. Stairs climbed downward into the ceiling. Broken mirrors floated in the air, each one reflecting a different version of Darian. One as a child stealing bread, one as a student sleeping over books, one kneeling before Cassian's false testimony, one dead, with a spell core cut from his chest. At the center of the chamber stood 9 empty chairs. On each chair rested a black mask. The masks turned toward him. A woman's voice came from the first. Another discarded student. A man's voice came from the second. "This one is thin." A child's voice came from the third. "This one is angry." Darian lifted a broken practice wand from his bag. "I am also tired." The masks laughed. The 9th mask did not. It floated from its chair and stopped before his face. "Why were you expelled?" I was framed. "No," the mask said. "That is what happened." "Why were you expelled?" Darian's jaw tightened. "Because I was poor." Deeper. "Because Cassian feared being second." Deeper. Darian looked at the mirrors. "Because the Academy only valued magic it could rank. Because Elira chose safety over truth. Because every noble in that courtyard needed one failure beneath them so they could feel tall," he whispered. "Because I was useful as long as I stayed weak." The 9th mask smiled without a mouth. "Correct." The floor vanished. Darian fell into darkness. He landed in a library made of bones and ink. Books hung from chains. Spells crawled across the shelves like insects. At the far end stood a black board with one sentence written across it. "All magic leaves a corpse." The 9th mask appeared beside him. "The Academy teaches living magic," it said. "Fire, water, wind, metal, illusion, healing, force. Clean names for clean families." Darian touched a floating page. It showed a spell circle half broken. The kind teachers threw away when students failed, the mask continued. But every failed spell leaves remains. Every broken oath leaves a pattern. Every erased name leaves a shadow. The Noctspire teaches the magic of what survives rejection. Darian looked at his hands. My mana is dead. No, the mask said. Your mana does not obey living spells. The blackboard cracked. A new sentence appeared. Videscript awakened. Darian felt something open behind his ribs. Not warm, not bright. A hollow space filled with silent letters. The first letter crawled into his palm. He gasped as pain cut across his skin. The letter was black, sharp, and alive. Write, the mask commanded. With what they left you. Darian remembered the ranking board erasing his name, the burn of his uniform. Ilira's trembling finger, Cassian's smile. He pressed his palm against the floor. A black spell circle spread from his hand, not smooth like Academy magic, jagged, hungry, honest. From the shadows rose the remains of every spell he had failed in class. Broken sparks, dead shields, miscursed blades, mistakes. They gathered around him like soldiers. The ninth mask whispered, Aurelian called you failure. The Noctspire calls you archive. For 30 nights, Darian trained inside the tower. Outside, only one night passed. He learned to read broken spells, to pull power from failed circles, to cut magic by writing its ending first, to summon shadow copies of spells that had once humiliated him. Every lesson cost blood. The Noctspire did not believe in gentle education. The masks taught with blades, traps, lies, and memory. On the 10th night, Darian fought a mirror of Cassian that knew every spell Cassian had stolen from tutors. On the 17th, he faced Illyra's voice, begging for forgiveness. He almost listened. The tower punished him by carving her accusation across his arm. He did not make that mistake again. On the 30th night, the 9th mask brought him to the highest chamber. A single black crown floated above an empty desk. The Academy's winter duel begins at dawn, the mask said. Cassian will be named student champion. Malrek will announce your crimes before the royal inspectors. Ilira will receive a scholarship paid with your silence. Darian stared at the crown. And you want me to stop them? No, the mask said. We want you to choose what kind of ruin you become. At dawn, Aurelian Academy gathered in the grand arena. Nobles filled the balconies, or royal inspectors sat beneath blue banners. Dean Malrek stood proudly beside Cassian, whose bandaged arm was now perfectly healed. Ilira stood behind them, pale and silent. The ranking board shone above the arena. Cassian, there, first rank. Then every torch went black. A cold wind passed through the marble seats. The arena gate opened. Darian walked in wearing a long black coat stitched with moving letters. The crowd gasped. Dean Malrek's face twisted. Guards! The guards moved. Darian raised 2 fingers, every spell circle carved into their armor cracked apart. Their weapons fell uselessly to the sand. Cassian stepped forward, smiling too hard. You should have stayed erased. Darian looked at the ranking board. so should your lies. He pressed his palm to the ground. Wide script spread beneath the arena, black lines running through marble like veins. The board flickered. Then the final trial memory appeared above it. Not illusion. Akiva the maze, the beast, Illyra falling, Darian saving her, Cassian hiding behind a barrier, then Cassian cutting his own arm and placing Darian's broken practice wand beside the blood. The arena fell silent. Illyra covered her mouth. Dean Malrek reached for the board controls. Darian wrote one letter in the air stop. Malrek's hand froze inches from the switch. Cassian's smile disappeared. "You think truth saves you," he hissed. "No," Darian said. "Truth just makes revenge cleaner." Cassian attacked first. Fire spears filled the arena. Darian opened his hand. The failed sparks that teachers once mocked rose around him and swallowed the flames. Cassian summoned a golden blade. Darian wrote its ending before it landed. The blade shattered. Cassian screamed and cast forbidden force magic, strong enough to crack the arena wall. Darian let it hit him. Smoke covered the sand. Illyra shouted his name. When the smoke cleared, Darian stood untouched behind a shield made from every protection spell he had failed during first year. The crowd saw it now. Not dead magic. Rejected magic. Darian stepped forward. Cassian stepped back. For the first time, the Academy's brightest noble looked exactly like what he was. A boy who had never lost without blaming someone else. Darian lifted his hand. Black letters wrapped around Cassian's throat, wrists, and spell core. Cassian fell to his knees. "Don't," he whispered. The crowd waited for blood. Darian wanted to give it to them. Then he looked at Illyra. She was crying now. Too late, always too late. He remembered what the tower asked. What kind of ruin would he become? Darian lowered his hand. Cassian's magic broke. Not forever, just enough that he would have to rebuild it honestly. That was worse for him. Darian turned to Dean Malrek. "Your turn." Malrek tried to run. The royal inspectors seized him first. When Darian opened the dean's hidden archive, the arena saw everything. Sold scholarship seats, stolen spell cores, poor students expelled so noble failures could rise, names erased from the ranking board for money. Darian's was not the first, only the first to return. By sunset, Dean Malrek was in chains. Cassian's title was stripped. Illyra approached Darian at the gate with shaking hands. "I was afraid," she said. "I know. I wanted to survive. So did I." She flinched. "Can you forgive me?" Darian looked at the academy behind her, then at the black tower waiting beyond the forest, visible only to him. "No," he said, "but you can tell the truth next time before someone dies for it." He walked past her. The royal inspectors offered to restore his student rank. Darian refused. Aurelian Academy had taught him what people worshipped. When power wore a clean uniform, the Noctspire had taught him what waited after the uniform burned. That night, the forbidden tower opened again. The 9 masks waited inside. The black crown still floated above the desk. "You showed restraint," the 9th mask said. "Disappointed." curious. Darian touched the crown. It was cold enough to hurt. Beneath the tower, something enormous shifted. The floor trembled. A voice deeper than the masks rose from below. First archive waking. The masks turned silent. For the first time, they looked afraid. Darian looked down as a staircase appeared where no staircase had been. Far beneath the tower, hundreds of erased names began whispering his. He had returned to the academy and taken back his truth. But truth was only the first door. The Noctspire had chosen him. Now Darian was beginning to understand why. Some failures were not mistakes. Some were keys. And somewhere beneath the Forbidden Tower, the oldest failure in history had just heard his name. And in that instant, Darian understood the joke of power. The Academy had not thrown him away because he was worthless. It had thrown him away because it had no language for what he was. They were wrong. By midnight, every door in Aurelian Academy began opening by itself. Classroom doors, dormitory doors, armory doors, doors sealed for decades behind stone walls. Even the small iron door beneath the ranking board, the one no student had ever noticed, opened with a sound like someone exhaling after being buried alive. The students screamed first, then the teachers, then the royal inspectors, because from behind every open door came the same whisper, "Remember us." Darian heard it from the Forbidden Tower. He stood inside the Noctspire's highest chamber, one hand resting on the black crown that had nearly frozen his fingers. The 9 masks hovered around him in silence. Inside, the sky above him was made of ink, and hundreds of pale names crawled across it like dying stars. Arlen Voss, Myra Den, Kale Thornsera, Wint. Names Darian did not know. Names the Academy had erased before it erased his. The 9th mask turned toward the floor, where a staircase had appeared after the first archive woke. "You should not have spared the Academy," it said. Darian looked at the names burning across the false sky. "I did not spare it. You left its walls standing. I wanted truth." The mask laughed softly. "Truth is a door. Once opened, everything behind it expects to be seen." Far below the tower, something knocked once, twice. Then 100 voices whispered Darian's name. By morning, Aurelian Academy was no longer celebrating. The marble courtyard where Darian had been expelled now looked like a battlefield without blood. Students huddled near fountains. Teachers argued in panicked circles. The ranking board flickered above them, no longer listing the top 10 students. It showed only blank spaces. Then, one by one, names appeared: not current students, missing students, expelled students, dead students. The poor scholarship boy who vanished after failing flame theory, the noble daughter who broke a healing spell and was called unstable, the twins who failed their mana test and were sent home, except no carriage had ever left the gate. Every name appeared for 3 seconds, then scratched itself out. Royal Inspector Faust stood beneath the board with 2 guards and a face like cold stone. "This is your doing," he said. When Darian entered the courtyard, Darian wore the black coat of moving letters. "No," Darian said. "This is what your silence stored." Vast's jaw tightened. "You were offered reinstatement protection. A legal path. I was offered a clean cage. You are harboring illegal magic." Darian glanced toward the forest. Illegal magic exposed your legal crimes. A few students lowered their eyes. Then someone pushed through the crowd. Illyra Morn, her silver hair was unbound. Her academy ribbon was gone. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked like someone who had not slept since choosing the wrong truth. "Darian," she said. They found another room. He studied her. "Who did?" "The servants. Under the East Lecture Hall. There are desks inside. Children's desks. More than 50. All carved with names no one remembers." Inspector Faust grabbed her arm. "That area is restricted." Illyra pulled free. "Restricted is what you call a grave when you do not want prayers." The courtyard went silent. Darian looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked toward the East Hall. No one stopped him. The East Lecture Hall had always smelled of chalk, old paper, and noble perfume. Darian had spent 3 years sitting in its last row, pretending not to hear laughter whenever his spell circles collapsed. Now the room smelled like wet stone. At the back wall, behind a fallen bookcase, stairs descended into darkness. Black letters crawled down the steps. "Failure accepted. Name unavailable, ma. Unpaid." Darian raised his hand, and void script opened in his palm. The letters on the stairway bowed. "Inspector." Faust whispered, "What are you?" Darian did not look back. "The student you expelled." He descended. Beneath the lecture hall was a classroom, not ruined, preserved. 56 small desks stood in straight rows. On each desk rested a gray uniform, folded neatly. Above the front wall hung an older ranking board, cracked down the center. No names, only numbers. Subject 1, Subject 2, Subject 3. At the teacher's desk sat a skeleton wearing an academy badge. Its hand still held a pen. Illyra covered her mouth. Darian approached the first desk. A name had been carved into the wood with fingernails. Arlen Voss. The moment Darian touched it, the room changed. A memory opened. A boy stood before teachers, trembling as his fire spell turned black. The teachers called him corrupted. The dean before Malrek ordered his name removed. Guards dragged him below. Then the ranking board above the old classroom drank the boy's shadow. The memory ended. Darian stepped back. His coat rustled with angry letters. They used them as fuel. The ninth mask's voice whispered from his shadow. Not their bodies, their failures, their shame, their names after rejection. The ranking board was built from erased students. Inspector Faust went pale. "That is impossible." Darian turned to him. "You keep saying that, near evidence." A sound came from the back of the classroom. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The old ranking board split open. Behind it was a door of student nameplates. It opened inward. Cold air spilled out. A child's voice whispered, "Are we allowed to come out now?" Illyra began crying. Darian walked to the door. Beyond it stretched a hallway lined with classrooms, each one full of empty desks. No, not empty. Shadows sat in them, children-shaped, teenager-shaped. Some small enough to still hold wooden practice wands. Their faces were blank, their names had been eaten. Then a shadow girl lifted her head. "Are you the teacher?" Darian's rage broke into something sharper. "No," he said. "I am the one opening the door." He pressed his palm to the floor. Void script spread across the underground hallway. The erased shadow stirred. The old classroom screamed. Above ground, every door in Aurelian Academy flew open at once. The first shadow stepped out of its desk, then another, then dozens. Each one carried a broken spell in its hands. Dead flames, cracked shields, half-healed wounds, songs without sound. The remains of magic no teacher had wanted to understand. Darian wrote one word in the air: remember. The word shattered like glass and entered every shadow. Faces formed, eyes opened. Names returned as whispers first, then voices. Arlen Voss fell to his knees, suddenly no longer a shadow but a thin boy with black fire in his hands. Mira Den woke screaming with silver light leaking from her eyes. Cale Thorne clutched his own chest and sobbed because he remembered his mother waiting at a gate that never opened. 56 students came back in the first room. Then the second classroom opened. Then the third. Inspector Faust dropped to his knees. "We did not know." Darian looked at him. "You did not ask." From the stairway came running footsteps. Professor Seraph Holt appeared with a squad of royal spell guards. He had been promoted overnight, rewarded for loyalty. While the academy burned, his face twisted when he saw the restored students. "Abominations," Seraph whispered. The word moved through the room like a knife. Arlen flinched. Mira Den stepped back. Darian turned slowly. "Say that again." Seraph lifted his wand. "They are illegal spell residue. If they reach the surface, every noble house will demand answers. The academy will collapse." "Good." Seraph's eyes hardened. He gave the order. The spell guards attacked. Living magic filled the underground classroom. Gold chains, blue fire, white blades, clean spells cast by clean men. Darian moved first. He wrote beneath the first chain, "End." The gold links died mid-air and fell as dust. Arlen screamed and raised his hands. Black fire swallowed blue flame without heat. Mira Den opened her silver eyes, and every white blade turned backward toward the guards who cast them. The erased students were terrified, untrained, broken. Powerful Darian did not command them. He stood between them and the guards. Seraph aimed a killing spell at Arlen. Darian stepped into its path. The spell pierced his shoulder. Pain flashed white. "Illyra," shouted. Darian caught the spell with his bare hand before it exited his back. The ninth mask whispered, "Now you understand. They are not your army." Darian crushed the spell. "They are witnesses." He lifted his hand. Every failed spell in the underground classrooms rose at once. Hundreds of broken circles, thousands of rejected sparks. A storm of abandoned magic filled the hall. The The spell guards froze. Darian wrote one sentence across the air. Class dismissed. The storm struck. Weapons shattered, armor cracked. One snapped, no one died. Everyone fell. Seraph remained standing, shielded by a noble relic at his throat. He laughed shakily. You think this ends anything? The royal court will seal the tower. They will burn every record. They will call you a monster. Darian walked toward him. Seraph stepped back. You need proof. Darian pointed to the restored students. I have proof. They will say, you created them. No, Illyra said. Everyone turned. She stood in front of the old teacher's desk, holding the skeleton's pen and ledger. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. I have records. Names, payments, orders. Noble signatures. Every student erased. Every family silenced. Every ranking bought with a missing child. Seraph's face drained. Illyra looked at Darian. I told the lie that ruined you, she said. Let me tell the truth that ruins them. For a moment, Darian saw the girl he had once protected. Not forgiven, not clean, but choosing the harder door too late rather than never. He nodded once. Then the deepest classroom opened. The lights went out. Even the restored students fell silent. A voice rose from below. Old Pepand, starved. Who is returning names without permission? The 9 masks appeared around Darian. All at once, their voices were frightened. First archive. The floor split open. Below was another classroom, 1 desk, 1 chair. 1 student sitting with his back turned. He looked no older than Darian, but his shadow filled the room like a kingdom. The 9th mask whispered, the first erased student. Darian stepped to the edge of the broken floor. What is your name? The seated boy laughed softly. They took it before language learned to mourn. The restored students began whispering. The boy stood. The first archive turned. His face was blank, except for a black smile. You opened the little doors, Darian Vale. He lifted one hand, far above. The Noctspire bell rang. But I am the door they buried the world behind. A force slammed through the underground hall. Darian fell to one knee. The restored students screamed as their returned names flickered. The first archive was pulling them back, not to punish them, to become them. Darian understood instantly. This was not a prisoner waiting to be saved. It was a hunger made from every rejection before his. He drove his bleeding hand into the floor. Vide's script answered. The Noctspire opened behind him like a black sun. Darian wrote with blood, pain, and every name he had restored. Not yours. The words struck the first archive and forced him back into the lower classroom. The door began closing. The first archive smiled wider. Good. A warden should know how to lock things away. Darian froze. The word landed too deeply. Warden. Then the door slammed shut. Silence returned. Not peace, only delay. For now it held by nightfall. The erased students stood in the courtyard of Aurelian Academy. Some were children. Some were older than they should have been. Some had been missing for decades. Nobles arrived in carriages demanding explanations. They found their signatures on the academy walls. The royal inspectors were too busy arresting everyone else. Illyra handed the ledger to the restored students, not to the court. "Your names belong to you," she said. Arlen Voss looked at Darian. "What happens to us now?" Darian looked at the academy. Its gates stood open. Its ranking board was destroyed. Its walls were still beautiful. Beautiful cages made prisoners doubt they were trapped. "You choose," Darian said. "Stay, leave, learn, burn your uniform. Keep it. No one decides for you again." Arlen looked toward the forest. "The tower chose you." Darian glanced at the Noctspire. It stood where only the rejected could see it. "No," he said. "The tower opened for me. That is not choosing what I become." The restored students lowered their heads, not bowing, listening. Later, Darian returned to the Noctspire alone. The 9 masks waited beneath the black crown. The staircase to the first archive remained sealed, but black cracks pulsed around it like veins. The 9th mask spoke first. "You saved them. I opened the doors. You also closed one." Darian looked at the sealed stair. "What is the first archive?" The masks were silent too long. Then the 9th answered. "The first failure. The first name erased. The first magic the world decided should not exist." "And why does it want me?" The black crown turned slowly in the air beneath the tower. The sealed door knocked once. The first archive whispered through the stone. "Because you are not the tower's heir, Darian Vale." The masks trembled. The voice smiled inside the dark. "You are its next lock." Darian stood beneath the crown as the Noctspire bell rang again. He had opened the erased classrooms. He had returned the stolen names. He had saved the students the academy buried. But the oldest failure was awake now, and it knew exactly what he was for. The oldest failure in history did not break out of the Forbidden Tower. It erased the door. One moment, the staircase beneath Noctspire was sealed. The next, there was only darkness where the stone should have been. Then every restored student in Aurelian Academy forgot one letter of their name. Arlen Voss woke with Arlen carved across his desk, but the word Voss had vanished from his memory. Myra Den opened her mouth and could no longer say Den. Across the courtyard, 100 rescued students grabbed their throats as pieces of themselves disappeared. Above them, shattered ranking board lit with a single sentence. "First archive is open." Darian Vale felt the message cut through his void script. He stood inside Noctspire's highest chamber beneath the floating black crown. The 9 masks circled him, no longer laughing. For the first time, they looked old, afraid. The 9th mask turned toward Darian. "You must wear the crown." Darian looked at the vanished staircase. "And become the tower's lock." "Yes, for how long?" The mask did not answer. Darian understood, for River was often hidden behind silence. Far below, something whispered through every wall. Darian Vale. The first archive spoke with the voices of erased children, failed mages, forgotten teachers, and students whose families had been paid to stop asking questions. You returned their names, it said. Now I will return them to myself. The black crown lowered toward Darian's head. He caught it with one hand. Cold entered his bones. The tower showed him what would happen if he accepted. Noctspire sealed. The first archive trapped the restored students safe. Darian standing alone inside the highest chamber, while years became decades and decades became dust. A perfect lock, a useful prisoner. He threw the crown across the room. No. The masks recoiled. If you refuse, said the ninth, the archive will consume every erased name, then every living one. Then help me destroy it. We cannot, Darian said. Or will not. The tower bell rang at Aurelian Academy. Another letter vanished from every rescued student's name. Darian opened a black door through the tower. I have already been erased once, he said. I will not save anyone by agreeing to disappear. Then he stepped through. The academy courtyard had become a storm of letters. Names peeled from doors, books, uniforms, and memory stones. Black characters rose into the sky and spun above the school. Teachers ran without remembering which classrooms belonged to them. Nobles shouted titles no one recognized. One royal guard stared at his wife's name written inside his ring and began to cry because he no longer knew whose it was. At the center of the courtyard, the restored student stood inside a circle of Illyra's silver barriers. She was bleeding from the nose. Arlen held black fire between both hands. Miraden's glowing eyes flickered. Darian landed beside them. Illyra looked at him. Tell me you have a plan. The tower wants to turn me into a permanent lock. That is not a plan. I said no. That is more like you. A crack opened across the courtyard. A figure climbed from it. The first archive wore the shape of a young man, but its body was made from scratched-out names. Its face remained blank except for a black smile. With every step, another student forgot who they were. Inspector Faust raised his sword. Evacuate the academy. The archive looked at him. Faust's family name vanished from the blade. He dropped to one knee, confused. Darian wrote "Remember" across the air. The words struck Faust's chest. His eyes cleared. He stood again. The archive tilted its head. You spend yourself returning crumbs. People are not crumbs. They become small when separated. It lifted one hand. The storm of stolen names tightened into a spear. Darian raised every failed shield stored inside his void script. The spear pierced them one after another. 100 failures broke. The last shield held. It was the first protection spell Darian had ever failed at age 12. The one his teacher had thrown into the fire. Now it saved the entire courtyard. The first archive laughed. You command remains. I command why they were abandoned. It spoke one sentence. You were never enough. Every failed spell around Darian turned against him. Dead flames burned his coat. Broken chains wrapped his wrists. Cracked blades rose toward his throat. The archive did not control magic. It controlled shame. Darian fell to one knee. Around him, students heard the voices that had ruined them. Too weak, too strange, too poor, too dangerous. Ilira's barrier shattered. Arlen's black fire began, consuming his hands. The first archive opened its arms. Come home. No rankings, no rejection, no separate names to wound. For one terrible second, the offer sounded kind. Become one archive, one mind, no one alone. No one erased because no one remained separate enough to lose. Then Darian heard a child whisper, "I want my mother." He looked at Cale Thorne, the restored boy from the buried classroom. The archive promised an end to loneliness by destroying everyone who could feel it. Darian forced himself upright. That is not belonging. The black smile widened. What would you know of belonging? Darian tore the dead chains from his wrists. I know it requires a choice. He looked at the restored students. Do not fight for me, Arlen stared at him. Then what do we do? Write your names. Darian slammed his palm against the courtyard. Vide script spread across the marble, forming 100 empty circles. A circle opened beneath every rescued student. Your magic remembers how they broke it, Darian said. Make it remember who survived. Arlen knelt first. With black fire, he wrote Arlen Voss. The letters burned without consuming the stone. Mira Den wrote her name in silver light. Cale Thorne scratched his into the marble with a broken practice wand. One by one, the restored students wrote, not rankings, not titles, names. The courtyard shook. The first archive's storm weakened. Every name anchored one person to the world. Ilira stepped into the final empty circle. Her hand trembled. I was not erased. No, Darian said. You helped erase me. Pain crossed her face. Then I do not deserve a circle. That is another way of hiding. She looked at him. Darian pointed to the stone. Write the name of the person responsible for what you do next. Ilira knelt. She wrote, Ilira Morn. The silver letters did not glow beautifully. They cracked, but they held. The first archive screamed. The sound broke every remaining window in the academy. Its body split into hundreds of shadows, each wearing a different forgotten face. The shadows rushed the circles. Students defended their own names. Arlen's black fire devoured the voice, calling him corrupted. Mira reflected the memory of teachers locking her underground. Cale struck the shadow of the guard who dragged him from his mother. They were frightened. Some fell, others pulled them back up. For the first time, failed magic fought without being commanded. Darian ran toward the archive. It opened a doorway inside its chest. Beyond it he saw the oldest classroom. One desk, one chair, one nameless child sitting alone. Darian entered. The world outside vanished. The classroom smelled of ash and rain. A boy sat at the desk, carving lines into the wood, not the smiling monster. A child, thin, barefoot, perhaps 11 years old, a noble teacher stood behind him in a memory, shouting that the boy's magic was unnatural. The child had invented void script, not to destroy spells, to repair mistakes without forcing them into approved forms. He taught rejected children in secret. The Academy's founder took his work. Then the nobles erased him because a lowborn child could not be allowed to become the beginning of royal magic. They removed his name from every record, used his power to build the ranking system, built Noctspire around what remained. The memory teacher spoke. Aren Solis never existed. The child at the desk stopped carving. Darian felt the truth enter him. Aren Solis, the first archive, had once possessed a name. Darian stepped closer. The child looked up without a face. "Do not call me that." Why? That boy waited for someone to return. Darian looked at the empty classroom. No one did. The world deserves erasure. Some of it. The child's black smile returned. "Give me your body. I will open every hidden room. I will erase every ranking, crown, law, and name. No one will be rejected again, because no one will exist." "Peace." "No," Darian said. "Silence." Aren rose. The classroom expanded into endless desks filled with faceless children. "You cannot defeat everything they abandoned. I do not need to." Darian opened his bleeding palm. "I only need to return what they stole first." He wrote the name in the air. Aren Solis. The letters refused to remain. The archive tore them apart. Darian wrote again. Aren struck him with the memories of 1,000 expulsions. He felt children dragged underground, pancrants bribed, students begging teachers, names scratched from doors. Darian collapsed. Aren stood above him. "A name is a wound, sometimes." Darian pushed himself up. "It is also how someone calls you home." He wrote the name a third time. Outside the classroom, 100 restored students spoke together. Aren Solis. Illyra joined them. Inspector Vaust, the servants. Even frightened students who had once laughed when Darian's uniform burned. The name entered the tower from every open door. Aren screamed, not like a monster, like a child hearing his own voice after centuries. His blank face cracked, eyes appeared, brown, human. Tears ran down them. The endless classroom began to collapse. Aren whispered, "Why would you return it?" Darian stood before him. "Because what they did to you was real." Aren looked toward the disappearing desks. "And what I became, also real. Will you forgive me?" "No." Aren almost smiled. "Good." Darian held out his hand. "But you can stop." For a long moment, the oldest failure stared at it. Then Aren placed his hand in Darian's. The first archive opened, not like a prison, like a book releasing pages. Every stolen name burst from the classroom and returned to the world. Across Aurelian Academy, teachers remembered forgotten students. Families in distant towns woke screaming names they had been forced to bury. Portraits changed, ledgers filled, graves recovered inscriptions. The restored students became fully solid beneath the morning sky. Aren began fading. Darian tightened his grip. "Stay." "I was held together by what I stole. Then choose what remains." Aren looked at the one desk still standing. He sat. For the first time, his name appeared across its surface. The classroom door opened to sunlight. Aren Solis stepped through. He was no longer the first archive, only a boy carrying too many years. The 9 masks waited in the courtyard. The black crown floated above them. "The tower requires a lock," said the 9th. Darian looked at Noctspire. "No, the tower requires a new rule." He raised his hand. Void script spread across every wall of the tower and academy. He wrote slowly. "Name may be stored without choice." The black crown cracked into 9 pieces. Each piece entered 1 mask. The masks gasped as bodies formed beneath them. Not jailers, keepers. The Noctspire doors opened permanently. Its forbidden library poured into Aurelian Academy. The Academy's golden ranking board collapsed. In its place rose a black wall with empty space for names. Not ranked, not erased, simply present. By winter, Aurelian Academy no longer existed. The nobles fought the decision. The restored students fought harder. The school reopened as the Open Archive. The royal court demanded ownership of the Open Archive 3 times. Darian answered the first demand by returning every ledger they had hidden. He answered the second by inviting the families of the erased students to read them. When the third arrived with soldiers, Aaron opened the tower gates, and 100 named students stood beside him. The soldiers lowered their weapons. After that, the court stopped calling the school forbidden. It began calling it independent, which was fear dressed as diplomacy. Arlen taught black flame control. Mira studied broken healing spells. Illyra remained, not as a hero and not as someone forgiven, but as keeper of the records she once helped corrupt. Aaron attended the first lesson under his own name. Darian refused the title of headmaster. Titles became walls too easily. He accepted caretaker. On the first morning, new students gathered before the black wall. Some possessed wild magic. Some had no magic. Some had powers no kingdom had named. Darian handed each of them a piece of chalk. "What is the first lesson?" Arlen asked. Darian looked at the wall. "Write your name." One by one, they did. That evening, Darian stood at Nocspire's highest window. The tower was no longer whispering from hunger. Below, doors remained open. Aaron approached carrying a book. "Are you certain this is finished?" Darian looked beyond the academy. Far across the kingdom, 3 lights appeared. A drowned library beneath the western sea. A red bridge sealed inside a mountain. A glass throne buried under the royal capital. Other forbidden places. Other things erased. Other doors beginning to remember. Darian closed the book in Aaron's hands. This story is: the Noctspire bell rang once across the valley. Not a warning, an invitation. They had called Darian Vale a failure. They had burned his uniform, erased his rank, and thrown away his future. Instead, he became the man who ended the right to erase anyone else. The Forbidden Tower had chosen him as its final lock. Darian chose to become its first open door.